All right, so here we go with objectives 3 and 4, which is solving one-step equations, but now we're going to be solving them using fractions and decimals. So this is really an extension of objective 2. It's just going a little bit further. Now we're talking about fractions and decimals. So the procedure isn't all that different. It's actually exactly the same. The goal, in order to solve these equations, is to get the variable by itself. So we want to get the variable by itself. Well, how do we get the variable by itself? We solve using reverse order of operations or using inverse operations, right? So if you remember, that's reverse PEMDAS. So we solve using reverse order of operations. And that is reverse PEMDAS. So please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. We're going to go in reverse order. So starting with addition and subtraction, then multiplication and division, and then exponents in parentheses. A quick reminder, you can put this, you can put a star next to this, you can put it in bold. If you do something to the left, you must also do it to the right. So if we add 6 on the left side, we also have to do that to the right side. We have to add 6 on the right side. So if you do something to the left, you have to do it to the right. Right? You can think of these equations as scales. You have to balance the scales. If you do it to the left side, you have to do the exact same thing on the right side in order for the scales to balance. And last but not least, this is the only new thing here. Decimals and fractions. So we're adding those now in this objective. Decimals and fractions, they work the same way as integers. Decimals and fractions work the same way as integers. So as those whole numbers that we've been solving equations with in the past, decimals and fractions are going to work the same way. We're going to treat them the same. So let's take a look at a couple examples. Here I have 1.3p minus 3.2p equals 7.25. So we start and we look at the equation and we determine what do we do first? Well, we want to do this in reverse order of operations. So we're going to do this in reverse PEMDAS. So you can write that as a note. I'm going to start with addition and subtraction. Do we see any addition or subtraction? I see we have a minus 3.2. So we want to do the opposite of that. We want to do the opposite of minus 3.2. The opposite of minus 3.2 is plus 3.2. So if we add 3.2 to the left side, we must also add 3.2 to the right side. So on the left-hand side, the minus 3.2 and the plus 3.2, those cancel. That's the whole point. And then we have 7.5 plus 3.2. Now, for adding and subtracting decimals, I recommend using your Inspire calculator. So if you have that, go ahead and take it out, turn it on. We're going to open up a new document. Do you want to save? No, you don't have to save. And add a calculator. We want to calculate. So we want to add 7.5 plus 3.2. So you can punch that in. 7.5 plus 3.2. And we get 10.7. So on the right-hand side, we have 10.7. We bring down the equal sign. And then on the left-hand side, all that's left is that 1.3p. So that comes down too. Now again, decimals and fractions work the same way as integers. So here where we have 1.3p, that's just a number out in front. That's a number times the variable. So in order to get rid of the times 1.3p, we have to divide by 1.3p. Okay, remember we're trying to get p by itself. So we divide both sides by 1.3. So on the left-hand side, the 1.3 and the 1.3 cancel. That's the whole point of dividing. So we have p, bring down the equals. And then on the right-hand side, we have 10.7 divided by 1.3. So let's go back to the calculator. And remember, in order to divide, we can always set up our fraction bar in our Inspire calculator. In order to do that, we hit Control, Divide. That sets up a fraction bar. So we're going to do 10.7 divided by 1.3, and it's going to give us 8.23077. And you could write out the exact answer, 8.23077, or you can round. Typically, 2 places is good enough. So you can round it and say that we have P equals 8.23. As always, we should check our work, see if we got the right answer. So we're going to check. And remember, to check, you take your solution and you plug it right back into the original equation. So here we have 1.3 times P. Well, P we just solved for is 8.23. Minus 3.2 equals 7.5. So now we can evaluate. Here we have 1.3 times 8.23. Let's go back to our calculator. We have 1.3 times 8.23, and that gives us 10.699. So we have 10.699 minus 3.2 equals 7.5. I'm just bringing down the rest. All right, one more step. So we have 10.699 minus 3.2. So we go back to the calculator. So we can type in 10.699, but you can also just hit minus, and you'll see how it says answer minus. What the calculator is doing is it's taking our last answer, 10.699, and it's plugging it in here. So you can just hit minus if you want to include that in your next entry. So we're taking 10.699 minus 3.2. And we get 7.499. So this left-hand side, we have 7.499 equals 7.5. Are these equal? Now, for the purposes of this, yes, we're going to say that they are equal. This checks out. We did it correctly. But the reason why this is not exactly 7.5 is because we used a rounded answer. If we were to plug in this exact answer when before rounding, if we were to plug that back into the original equation, then you would get exactly 7.5. But because we rounded, it's going to be really close. So anytime you round and you're checking your answer, just make sure that it's close to what it should be. So this 7.499 is really, really close to 7.5. So we know that we did that correctly. Let's try an example with fractions. So here we have 3 over 4 W times W plus 1 over 2 equals 9 over 2. Okay, so to do this, we go in reverse PEMDAS. So I'm going to go ahead and write that again. So PEMDAS, but we're going to go in reverse. So do we have any addition and subtraction? Well, we have addition here. We have plus 1/2. Now we're going to treat this 1/2, this 1 over 2, as just its own number, just like we would with integers. So instead of plus 1/2, in order to get rid of that, we have to do the opposite, minus 1/2. And if we do that to the left-hand side of the equal sign, we also have to do it to the right-hand side of the equal sign. So this plus 1/2 and the minus 1/2 cancels. And all that's left on the left-hand side is this 3/4 W, or 3 over 4 times W. Bring down the equal. And then we have 9/2 minus 1/2. So let's go back to the Inspire and let's plug that in. 9/2 minus 1/2. So in order to subtract fractions, we're going to use our fraction bar in our Inspire. So remember to pull up your fraction bar, hit Control Divide. So Control and Divide. And that gets your fraction bar. And we want to do 9/2 minus 1/2. So 9/2. So you hit down to go to the denominator. 9/2. And then you got to hit right to get out of the fraction so that you can plug in your other fraction. We're going to hit minus, and we want 1/2. So minus 1/2. So we got to use our fraction bar again. Control Divide. And then 1/2. So 1, and then go down 2. So that's how you type in 9/2 minus 1/2. You can hit enter, and we get 4. So funny, we've got two fractions. When we subtract them, we get a whole number. So 9/2 minus 1/2 is 4. There's one more step here. So we don't have W by itself quite yet. We've got one more step. So we have 3/4 times W. Now, again, we're going to treat this 3/4 as just its own number, right? It's 3/4. It's just one single number. So in order to get rid of that, here we have 3/4 times W. We can do the opposite, which is divide by 3/4. So instead of multiplying by 3/4, in order to get rid of that, we divide by 3/4. And if we do it to the left-hand side, we must also do it to the right-hand side. So 4 divided by 3/4. On the left-hand side, these cancel. So all that's left is W. And then on the right-hand side, we have 4 divided by 3/4. Let's go back to the Inspire. So we have 4 divided by 3/4. So we got to use our fraction bar. So Control, divide. So 3/4. So 3 and then 4. You hit enter, and you get an answer of 16/3, or 16/3. So W equals 16/3. And that is our solution. We have to check our work, so on the right-hand side, we will check. And to check our work, we just plug it right back into the original. So we have 3/4 times W, which is 16/3, plus 1/2 equals 9/2. So we just evaluate this left-hand side, 3/4 times 16/3. So we're going to multiply those two. We have Control divide gives us our fraction bar. 3/4, 3/4, there we go, times, and then our fraction bar again, 16/3. And we get 4. So we have 4 plus 1/2 equals 9/2. And back to the Inspire, 4 plus 1/2. Again, we can take that answer from before and just hit plus now. And it'll say answer plus. And then we can do plus 1/2. So fraction bar, 1/2. And that gives us 9/2. So we have 9/2 equals 9/2. Well, does 9/2 equal 9/2? It sure does. So we did it correctly. All right, so this is objectives 3 and 4, solving one-step equations with fractions and decimals. We're going to get a whole lot of practice on this. Have a great day, everyone.